Hello, my name is Eileen Wright, and welcome everybody to Celebrating Women Everywhere. Behind me in this painting is a picture of my grandmother. She was born in 1900 in Kashmir, and the current situation has reminded me of her journey because at partition she travelled to England, which was a real shock to everybody that was forced into that situation. 1 million people died in partition, just to remind you. But she was a fantastic woman, and she was a very temperamental woman as well. She was fierce and she was very clever. And I've written this poem in honour of all the women that I know who are so fantastic and not always celebrated. It's called The Queen of the Menagerie. So begins magenta winged, the Queen of the Menagerie. Opening her artificial mink-trimmed cloak, she spins a fairy tale of modern myths, refashioning the incidental past in mists of Revlon, lavender and cinnamon. Syllabubs of melted passions linger on her tongue. She speaks midsummer, midwinter, yin and yang, Romulus and Remus, reincarnation, inspiration. Her world of thin pink candy floss becomes a mirror ball that glints, mysterious as ever, hints at more, and spins and spins. In an act of prestidigitation, she unpalms a rare surprise, reveals a slightly tarnished key, displays her ornamental lacquered cabinet of dreams, reviving talking heads of lovers, once complete, now disembodied from her history, exhibiting a veritable circus of carnivality. Far back, farther than any naive eye might stretch its gift of sight to see, under these beads and ruffles, sequins, dramas, gestures, perfumes and theatricals, is buried heartfelt simplicity. This is not, in fact, the love song of a practiced social butterfly. Despite the tricks and the devices, strategic lighting, swirling insubstantial skirts, flashes of flesh, amethyst silks from TK Maxx, nectar from Lidl, you'll find uncompromising kindness, tender hands that reach and touch, which don't draw back at first defensive bite, at something inconvenient she hasn't time for, or feels her precious other friends won't like. Beneath cascades of frabjous glitter, carefully concealed from public gaze, intelligence, compassion, generosity, offerings of hope disguised by random conversation, scattered plaster saints, tinsel idols, wise saws, popcorn, party hat, and well-worn metaphors. So begins, magenta winged, the Queen of the Menagerie. She's here at last, her rich veneer designed to please. My next poem is called Border Crossings, 22/02/2022. And I wrote it when the Russians first started putting their first boots across the border. But it made me think of all the boundaries and borders that have been crossed and all the things that it reminded me of. Border crossings, 2202-2022. I think my pink tulips must have been praying when they crossed the border. I had filled the vase again with fresher water, but nothing can revive this crossing of the border. I hear the word evasion when the politicians say invasion. And when they crossed the border, I saw the strong wide hand of Dad draw back to slap me just before I felt the sting, and I look at the tulips wilting. So they cross the border, as I realise I may drown in Rotterdam harbour. And they cross again, as hands begin to tighten round my neck and freeze my brain. And I am witness to the pain of a friend who hung herself in the USA. All the tulips nod and pray as they cross and recross the border again. And this is a short story I wrote in the middle of the night, probably at about 3 a.m, just before Christmas, on the 15th of December 2021. I really didn't want to celebrate Christmas, and there was only one solution, so I woke up in the middle of the night and I wrote the kangaroo solution. And it's scribbled on the back of a folder, and it still is scribbled on the back of a folder, which was the only bit of paper I could find. The kangaroo solution. Once upon a winter's night there came 5 kangaroos, lolloping and stolloping on their way for tokes and whiskey and all-night petrol, station goodies, chocolate bars and baccy and cheap cartoons to guffaw at in their 5 kangaroo unmelodious tones. One, called Barantz, thought himself boss because he had a gravel pit voice and a tail with the most thickest, wickedest muscle in it to go a-thumping on the half-snow, half-salad greens, plus an extra percentage added of outback sand. It's hard to imagine when you're doing on shut-eye, but it ain't happening because 5 kangaroos are coming. Anywho, Barents. The others laughed at he in their croakedish, shrillest and downright barracking barroom tones. Only Scabmusa, she smoked a thin, smelly cheroot and peeled bits of healing bark from a holly bush as she was passing, just to rub the sore spots on her bum, 'cause of walloping and lolloping on the wintry ground, and no time to stop and stare at some half-gibbous moon in this strange land. But they all had their dark shades on, 'cause of their meteorite showers flying out of the sky, and also 'cause they needed to look cool, and also 'cause they really didn't want to give a shit. Over on the ice-crack horizon, there was these 3 dudes on camels. Camels, huffed Barbacus II, kicking a passing human drunk in the beer belly with his hind leg. But he never knew, 'cause he was sadly stewed. Only his little grey, half-shivered dog uttered a recalcitrant yelp in reproach, as the moon cast a shadow light on the 5 hulking kangas, illuminating their close-together eyes. But how about those 3 dudes on camels? All serious, in heavy metal crowns and draping Arabic costumes, totally unsuited for a chill night in Bethlehem Street, down by the Tomcat and Mouse with 2 tails. Bob Corcus II, Scapmusa, Barrant, Filth and My Days all agreed on that, so they did. Filth unrolled this red-striped deck chair he, she, they, we kept in the nearest available pouch and settled down for a read of the Groniad. Then they all decided spontaneous like to add a corroboree. My days, who was a bit techie, tuned his rupad into the nearest brightest star, and they all settled in for a thumping, loud, rowdy good time, as those three dudes on camels, wearisome and troubled, went searching and scrying the street of the neighbourhood. Whether they found what they wanted, the five kangaroos doesn't know. Last seen, they were still a-parting, a-jeering and a-sneering at the three dudes who'd kept staring at the sky, and travelling round in circles ever decreasing, where they can be seen to this day, so they say. And away from the five kangaroos, some years ago I wrote a poem called Red River. And sometimes I've read it with several other people because it's got an echo in it. And this time I'm going to read it on my own. I read it at an event which was about peace, but it was also about relationships when I first wrote it. But peace is about relationships when they go wrong. Red River. A river of dark red, red river, runs between us in my head, and the wedding orchid has wilted in our picture. Our reflection in the mirror cracked from side to side, from it flows a ceaseless time, torrential, unrelenting tide, a river of dark red, red river, red river. Oh how I remember, oh how I remember our walk on the sand, how the wind blew so hard, you grew bored and hard, so hard as a fist of rage, but love took me to one side and whispered foolish nothings at me, till I was a seashell, 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 for your taking, and all the stones cried out, stones cry out, at the going of the tide, and the pebbles hard, so hard and hard under my thin soul, and you hard in your unlucky heart, and me at once in shadow, and me, a seashell in your clenched hand. Oh how I remember, oh how I remember our walk on the sand, the sand, the sand. A river of dark red, red river, runs between us in my head, red river, and the wedding orchid, red river, has wilted in our picture, red river, our reflection in the mirror, red river, cracked from side to side, red river, from it flows a ceaseless time, red river, torrential unrelenting tide, a river of dark red, red river. Thank you.